sensible conditions we put around it.
Question number 3, the Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. Does he agree that asset and income inequality have increased over the past 30 years, and if not, why not?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, no, I don't agree with that description of events in New Zealand. Income inequality increased in the 1980s and early 90s, and it peaked in 2004-5, and since then it's been relatively flat. I think a more accurate description has been that New Zealand has become more unequal in the last 30 years, but that's not true for the last 15 years, where income inequality has been pretty much flat.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Honourable David Parker.
There are two parts to that question. The Minister has only addressed income inequality, not asset inequality.
Does the Minister want to add anything further to the answer to address the question of asset inequality?
Speaker, and there are no reliable measures of asset inequality over the last 30 years.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Does he agree with John Key that New Zealand has a growing underclass, and why has John Key stopped talking about it?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, I do agree that New Zealand has an underclass. The good news is that despite the recession, it's not growing, and John Key talks about it all the time in government, because much of the government's activity has been focused on lifting immunisation rates, fixing our social housing mess, lifting persistent educational underachievement, reducing welfare dependency, all of which define our underclass.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Why did the Minister tell Parliament yesterday that over the last 2 years, quotes, this means that families and households have, on average, had real increases in their weekly wages, unquote, and then outside the House say, quote, I think a lot of households will be looking for benefits through pay rises, which households haven't had much of through the last 3 or 4 years, end quotes.
Honourable Bill English.
Speaker, because some of them haven't. As I was careful to say in the House, on average, real wages have increased, despite the fact that on Planet Labour they've been cut or gone down, or no one's had any pay rises. But you cannot know the circumstances of every individual family, and there will be some who will be looking for pay rises, if only for the reason they haven't had any in the last few years.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Does he accept that the bottom 50% of wage and salary earners have seen no increase in pay rates in real terms over the last 2 years, and that his government's employment law changes over the last 6 years is the cause of low or non-existent real wage growth for most working families in recent years?
Honourable
Mr Speaker, I'd have to check the figures on the member's first assertion, but I wouldn't agree with his second one. I think it's well known around the Western world, actually, that particularly for people with lower skills, there's been a lot of competition through global supply chains that have meant downward pressure actually on pay in some industries, and some industries themselves have gone through extensive restructuring and reduction. So I don't agree with his assertion that it's to do with the changes in employment relations legislation.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Does he agree that existing income inequality leads to ever-increasing asset inequality, and if not, why not?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, I simply can't answer the member's question because there's no particular evidence. What I can say is that for the largest single asset class of housing, that member's party should be supporting the government's measures to improve the supply of housing, because where it's restricted, as it has been in our metropolitan areas, insiders who already own houses benefit from price increases, and low and middle income New Zealanders who can't access the housing market miss out on that increase in wealth. So if the member believes anything that he's saying, he'd support the government on these measures instead of attacking us on them.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Honourable David Parker.
Why did he claim yesterday at FEC that there is no link between rising asset inequality and declining home ownership rates?
Honourable Bill
Mr.
English.
Speaker, I'd said there's no obvious link between the two, and the member hasn't produced any. But this red herring is another distraction from the problem that Labor claims income inequality is growing when the facts show that it isn't.
Order. Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Does he still say there's no link between rising asset inequality and declining home ownership rates?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, I've seen no evidence of a connection between the two, and the member hasn't produced any. But what he does need to produce is evidence that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. He won't be able to because it's not true. All the data shows that New Zealand's income inequality has been roughly flat for the last 10 years.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Do the income inequality figures that he refers to include all capital income?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, they do include a broad definition of income and one that has been used consistently. It doesn't matter how the member tries to reconstruct the official data on...
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order.
My question wasn't whether they include...
Order.
Point of order.
I'm going to ask the member to please just repeat his question.
Thank you. Does the measure of income inequality that he relies upon include all capital income?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, the figures, which are not figures that I rely on, they are the official calculations done by the Ministry of Social Development every year for the last 7 or 8 years, and they include all income. This does not help the member get round the fact that on planet Labor, the rich are getting poorer, rich are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer, but in the real world, they are not. Income inequality in New Zealand is not getting worse. If anything, it's getting slightly better.
Order. Question number 4, Melissa Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Development and asks what